Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers. This is the Saucony Axon 3. I am about to do my first run in this pretty affordable Saucony running shoe, probably in this vest because it's very toasty out there. And then I'll give you my initial thoughts on what it's like to run in the Saucony Axon 3. So some key details on the Saucony Axon 3. The first thing to talk about is price, and it is £105 in the UK, $100 in the US. So it definitely sits at the more affordable end of the running shoe market, and also in Saucony's range in general too as well. Now you're getting a 4mm drop here. You are getting a high stack of Power Run cushioning, so not the Power Run Plus or Power Run PB we've seen in this, things like the Saucony Triumph 21, and also kind of the Endorphin range as well. Getting pretty traditional looking kind of mesh up here, kind of a lot of kind of padding in the tongue and the collar here to kind of offer that comfort, pretty traditional laces. And then you're getting an outsole here, which obviously offers a lot more in terms of what you're getting in the forefoot of the shoe and also at the back of the shoe as well. Definitely feels a little bit slippery to touch. I don't know if that's going to be any kind of issues in terms of the outsole performance in terms of wetter conditions, but ultimately it's pretty dry at the moment, so we'll see how that fares when we get some kind of mixed kind of conditions to run in. But yeah, those are kind of key things to talk about with Saucony Axon 3. Now we'll go out and get a little run out in them, see what they're made of, and then let you know initial thoughts on the Saucony Axon 3. So I've just got back from my first run on the Saucony Axon 3, as you can probably see from the beads of sweat still running from my forehead. And I'll start with fit first, and I would say in general with the Saucony shoes, my experience with fit has been generally fine. I think there's been one or two shoes where it's felt a little bit on the narrow side. I think you do get that with some of the Saucony shoes. I think the early Endorphin speed shoes, and I think with the Axon 3, when I put it on, it definitely felt a little bit snug up front here in the toes, and I do think the forefoot does feel pretty narrow in that side of things. It wasn't something I noticed out on the run, but I did notice kind of that initial kind of putting on and kind of lacing up, it did feel quite narrow. So I don't know whether going half a size up might kind of improve things on that side of things, but I think, yeah, there is definitely some quite, a narrow feeling on the forefoot. Elsewhere it felt generally fine, particularly kind of in the midfoot. Pretty happy with the level of padding you're getting around the collar, and you've got this kind of gently kind of padded tongue as well, and the laces offered a pretty, they're pretty standard and offered a pretty kind of good lockdown. There's nothing particularly flashy about this upper, really. It feels not Saucony's not doing massively anything radical here in terms of what you're getting here, but I would say just about, I think, from a UK size 8 point of view, it worked for me. There might be an argument to say maybe going a little bit bigger in this shoe, just because of what I said about the up front and the toes, but ultimately the fit for me felt generally fine overall in the run. So into that first run, and I did a 10k in the Axon 3. It was pretty easy going purely because of the weather, it being quite hot out there, but I did try to pick it up in places where I could to get a sense of how versatile this shoe is, because I think that's probably the best way to kind of class this shoe. I think that's how Saucony would probably bill it as a shoe that you can use for a mixture of runs. Now the first thing I would say is that runs pretty light, which is something I wasn't expecting. I think I weighed in against the Puma Velocity Nitro 2 and it came in a little bit lighter, so that's always a plus. I think if you want to run a little bit quicker in it and it's not working against you, it doesn't feel like a bulky shoe to run in, so that's definitely a plus. The other thing, from the rides point of view, and obviously this Power Run midsole is not the soft plush kind of midsoles you get on the kind of the Saucony Triumph 21, the 20, things like the Endorphin Speed 3, the Pro, the Elite. You've got that softer kind of feel of it. Maybe get a little bit more bounce for it, but you do. I think it's a good mix between being firm and a little bit soft, so you do get something you can kind of sink into a little bit. So you get something, I think, that's feels nicely cushioned, feels comfortable, feels protected, but I also think there's some responsiveness there as well, a nice responsiveness there. I also feel like there's a little bit of a nice rocker feeling, gets you up on your toes as well. It's not got that speed roll geometry here, but it feels that there's aspects of it getting you up on those toes, getting you through those transitions relatively nice and quickly, give you that scope to run a little bit quicker in it. And it felt pretty good running it kind of a little bit more of a tempo pace in it. And when I had to ease back, it felt generally fine from that point of view as well. As I said, it's a pretty light shoe, and it's when you do slow down, it doesn't feel like a heavy shoe to kind of weigh you down when you want to kind of ease things up on the pace front. Outsole wise, I mean, it was absolutely fine. I mean, it's pretty dry at the moment, and I was on pavements went onto a little bit of road at places, but it was absolutely fine from that point of view. I would like to see how it fares in kind of wetter conditions. I mean, it might be a while before we can get some wetter kind of conditions here in the UK. You know, you never know though. You know, it's a British summer, so we could have. And yeah, it was fine from that point of view. Had no issues with the outsole. Looks like it feels well protected in terms of the kind of the heel and the kind of forefoot parts of the shoe. So from that point of view, the outsole felt fine. As I said, pretty dry conditions to run in at the moment. So yeah, it felt pretty good overall. I think, as I said, it felt all right when I wanted to run a little bit quicker in it. It felt comfortable when I wanted to ease off as well. And as a shoe potentially that's going to be a kind of a versatile one or an affordable one, it feels potentially off that first run that it could be a solid option. So yeah, solid first run in the Saucony Axon 3. Definitely looking forward to spending a bit more time in it. Maybe going a little bit quicker, maybe running a little bit of rain as well when that happens, and seeing how it copes in those conditions too. So some initial thoughts on the Saucony Axon 3, and I think feels like a pretty good cushion daily trainer shoe ultimately. You know, a shoe that, you know, it costs £100, $100, but ultimately if you said it was a little bit more than that, then, you know, I wouldn't be surprised really. I mean, it felt pretty good in that first run. It feels like it's a shoe that's going to be pretty versatile overall. The weight feels good. I think the outsole feels pretty good overall as well too. And yeah, if you kind of look at, you know, you go up from the Saucony Axon 3, you've got something like the Kinvara. Kinvara's got the Power Run base midsole as well, but you've got more of it here in the Axon 3, you know, back, you know, at the heel and at the forefoot as well. So it gives something, I think, probably a little bit more cushion, a little bit more comfortable, a little less firm than the Kinvara, which is Tom has kind of tested recently. So from that point of view, you know, it works pretty well. I say it felt pretty good when I ran a little bit quicker in it in places as well too. I think when you kind of look at the price, you look at what else you can get for that money. Now, the obvious one is the Puma Velocity Nitro 2. I mean, you know, it's a shoe that we absolutely love, and for good reason. It is a really, really good shoe, and it's it's a shoe that falls well below its kind of retail price of £100. You know, a lot of the time you get it close to kind of £50-60 in places if you shop around. Now, I would say in comparison, I think the Puma Velocity Nitro 2, obviously it's a touch heavier, basically, you know, having kind of weighed them both on the scales. I think maybe that shoe is built a little bit more for comfort. I think the midsole just offers something a bit more comfortable, a little bit softer in terms of that midsole, and you get something that's relatively responsive in Puma Velocity Nitro 2 as well, which you do get here, I think, with the Axon 3. So I think there's a lot of similarities, but I think maybe with the Velocity Nitro 2, you're getting maybe a thicker upper, a more comfortable kind of upper in general, but you're also getting something that's versatile on that shoe like you are here. You're probably going to think about other shoes that I haven't run in, but I think the Reebok Floatride Energy 5, which I know Nick has used, and I think, you know, that kind of sits around this price range. That has just dropped down to kind of £40-50. I think that runs a little bit firmer based on what Nick's kind of said in his videos, based on what I've seen in the Axon 3, but it feels as a shoe around that price point, below kind of £100 or around the £100 mark. It feels pretty good, and you know, I wouldn't have any issues picking this shoe back up right now and doing some kind of a mixture of different runs in it. As I said, it felt pretty good on that first run, and I expect it to, you know, be as good as that when I've done a little bit longer in it, run some quicker stuff, you know, shorter, kind of sharper stuff in it as well. So yeah, so far so good, I would say, in the Saucony Axon 3. It's the first time I've used an Axon shoe. I'm glad I have. I've used kind of pretty much every other shoe. I think the Kinvara, the Ride, the Guide, the Endorphin Speed, the Pro, the Shift. I've kind of pretty much got through the range, and I think this, you know, while it's the cheapest in Saucony's collection at the moment, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, or it means you're getting an inferior shoe compared to what you get in the rest of the range. So yeah, you know, pretty positive on that first run. Definitely looking forward to running a bit more in it. I think, you know, in terms of the price point, in terms of what you potentially get in here on the Axon 3 and what it's capable of, pretty solid overall, and yeah, very positive first impression on the Saucony Axon 3. Okay, so there you have it, some initial thoughts on the Saucony Axon 3. Plenty more running to do in this shoe, but if you've got any questions about the shoe or other shoes you want to know how it compares to, let us know in the comments. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.